Portions of this show are recorded. Strap in and be prepared.
Room for error is much slimmer in basketball.
One player and it changes your entire team. It's not like that in football. It's just not.
It's not.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Coach Mark Waskowski, Noah Eagle, Melissa Lombardi, Kenyon Barnard, Jonathan Stewart.
Sharp opinions.
Dana Altman probably earned a pass for a down year after almost 20 years of what he's done for Oregon basketball.
And some smiles.
Guys, I was stuck in a car wash.
Sounds like an R. Kelly song.
It's not an R. Kelly song.
It's Danny Havel.
I can't remember, and I've been doing this for longer than you've been alive, which is really horrible that I have to say that, but it's the truth.
Justin Grossweiner.
It's like the saying in Alaska that you don't have to be faster
Than the bear.
You just have to be faster than your friend.
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Fox Sports Newport. Sitting in for Danny today, it's Goose, Steve Mims.
Welcome into the Danny and Justin show on Fox Sports Eugene, Fox Sports Newport. Yes, Danny is back on the road as the voice of OSA basketball. So we got another 3-day run to sit in, although it's actually going to be 2 because I'm busy tomorrow. But either way, Justin, you don't have Danny for 3 days, but thanks for welcoming me in today.
Of course, you are always welcome. You look very, very relaxed today, as I said to you earlier.
Had some career changes. I just had some stuff going on lately, so I'm a little bit more relaxed and dressed down. So I'm in a good mood. Good place to go.
That's good to be.
I am. More and more of that to come someday, maybe. So today we have Travis Demers. Travis is going to be joining us at the next segment. We'll be talking about the Blazers coming off a tough loss. We'll talk about them as they make their run for likely the play-in game. Might ask him a little bit about Bam Adebayo's 83-point game and get into that. And Oregon State has a new head basketball coach. The Wayne Tinkle replacement was announced today, and he has some Oregon ties.
I didn't know this, actually.
Yes.
Good.
His
Well, you
wife
can break it down for us.
His wife is the Oregon soccer coach.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Justin Joyner is the new Oregon State head coach, as he comes from Michigan, where he was an assistant and former WCC assistant, and so he is going to be taking over Oregon State. And his wife, Tracy, is the soccer coach at Oregon.
Of course, yeah.
So as I joked on Twitter this week, the Junction City real estate market is about to be booming because they're going to have to find a place somewhere right in the middle. So before we get into the Oregon State basketball, we have to first put a wrap on the Oregon basketball season, which went down in flames yesterday, in part during your and Danny's show. As you guys were discussing, they fell behind 33-12 in the first half against Maryland in the Big Ten Conference first round, and that was in Chicago. And Yeoman's effort to get back into it, they quadrupled their points from the first half in the second half. After scoring 12 in the first half, they scored 48 in the second half, but that just led to a 70-60 loss, and the season comes to a crashing finish at 12-20 and 5-15 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it was not good. How did that even happen, first of all? That you score 12 points in the first quarter and then 48. They couldn't hit a bucket. I mean, they had 2, I think. It was, the second lowest I saw.
Yeah.
Tyson Alger had some great coverage there on site.
He was, our friend Tyson Alger was the lone representative.
Right. Yeah.
Props to Lookout for sending Tyson. As I told him, though, they might call him in and say, wait a minute here, or next time you're looking to travel, our budget might not be ready for a one-night game. But I'm thinking that Tyson probably had the idea in mind, hey, they should beat Maryland. Maybe they beat Iowa and at least make a little run and we can get kind of some coverage out of it. But no, that did not happen. And our friend Tyson was looked like the only person on press row and the only one in the postgame. And he did. Well, and I saw there was somebody, in fact, it was Pat Forty, the famous sports writer, who put a photo of the halftime score, 33-12 up, and said, is Dana Altman quiet quitting? Ha-ha. And another reporter went on and had a great point. He said, this is a team from Maryland and a team from Oregon playing in Chicago in a tournament that neither has any historical relevance for. So that can maybe explain why there's a couple hundred people in the stands. But for Oregon, just to put a wrap on it, the final, Nate Biddle was playing hard down to the end. Biddle in his final game for the Ducks has 16 points, 6 rebounds. Kwame Evans Jr. comes up with 14 points and 9 rebounds, and Oregon got 10 points from Takai Simpkins. But like I say, the season ends at 12-20, 5-15 overall. And now we move on to the question of what does this team look like next year? I think we've settled the fact that if there are people out there who don't want Dane Altman back, that Dane Altman's not one of those people, and I don't believe Rob Mullins is one of those people. So I think Dane Altman comes back. The question there for me becomes, does he make changes to his staff or additions to his staff? Does he want to bring in a general manager or some sort of a player personnel recruiting type director to maybe boost up some of the recruiting, which seems like it's fallen off in recent times? Some of his staff have been with him for a long time. Does he want to bring in some new blood? I'll be interested to see a little bit of that. But I think that's the question. If anybody has any question on what the coaching staff's going to look like next year, it doesn't and shouldn't have anything to do with Dane Altman, who certainly has earned himself a down year to come back from. But next year's going to be a critical one as they try to put together a roster because some interest in this program certainly waned this year. And 1 year you can live with, 2 years in a row becomes pretty tough for the program.
Yeah, it's the type of year that no matter how good of a coach you are and how good your process has been, you have to reevaluate after a season like this. Yeah. You just have to, because coming into the year, I don't think we saw this coming. We thought you get Brock back.
Brock back is top 3 guys.
Exactly, and then there's some depth around it. You didn't know how good Wei Lin was going to be. He was kind of this wild card, and I think that pretty much every scenario was the worst case scenario. And by the middle of the season, the roster just, like, you could look at it and go, man, like, I don't know how many games they're going to win. And they didn't win games for a long time. Yeah. So do I think that he probably, as in Dane Altman, needs to bring in some new blood in the staff? Probably. Yeah. That seems like the most realistic way to improve your team and improve your program and your system and the way you're doing things without obviously getting rid of Dane Altman. And I think that Dane Altman deserves another year. And I think that he should be able to determine whenever he wants to leave as a coach of University of Oregon.
Yep. And he's going to have to do something with this roster, obviously. So Tyson reported as being the lone. In fact, Tyson texted me, he said it was great because they have open locker rooms at conference tournaments, and so he got to go talk to whoever he wanted, and he was the only one there, so he got all the info. He did say that he asked Kwame Evans Jr. about coming back next year, and Kwame said it was too soon to decide.
Not a surprise.
Not a surprise, and probably means no, because typically if you're coming back, you know it. I mean, most of these guys, quite honestly, and not a Kwame Evans thing, most players come back in college, their agent has already discussed with the current school and with other schools what the offers look like. So most of these guys know by now what they would be offered to come back and what not. And so typically they would commit to coming back. So the fact that Kwame will also have professional options. Would he get drafted? I don't know, but he would certainly be able to play professionally for a few years. And he might decide that, again, like a lot of 5-stars, hey, 3 years of college was enough. I'm ready to go try this out in the pros. So whether it would be a transfer that we could see. Tyson also did say that he asked Sean Stewart, and Sean Stewart said he was coming back.
Okay, so there's at least one guy.
So there's one who's coming back. And as we've talked about before, this roster is going to be interesting next year. Shellstad's another one. Does he come back? Obviously, we know Biddle's gone. Takai Simpson's gone. So, do you get into, you've got the freshman coming in, the 5-star freshman, Trevor Ariza's kid. You've got another freshman high school recruit that we had talked about that could be coming.
Who was the Illinois
target as well. But, either way, they're going to have to add some depth to this team. I mean, right now, with Dedrick Lindsey, Wei Lin, Jamari Phillips, this one of the problems that they had this year was when injuries hit, they just didn't have the resources to replace those guys. When Shellstead went out, there was no point guard who could step right in and be ready to go. When Biddle was out, there wasn't another big who could do what he did. So the big part of this offseason for Dane Altman, I think, is going to be to rebuild this roster right away, and it's going to have to be done through some freshmen, but he's got to hit the transfer portal and hit on it this time because he had some misses last time. I think he's got to hit, and that's an NIL question too. What their budget is, I don't know, but I think Dana's going to need some money to go out into there as well. And again, does he look to bring in a recruiting guy or another assistant coach to do as well? So that said, there's a lot of work to be done there. But again, a lot of this stuff is already the backroom meetings have already started. I'm sure that most transfers have already made it clear that what they're going to be doing, and so. It'll be interesting to see how quickly Dana can rebuild this roster because, like I say, it's got to look better than this year. There's no reason to expect the results to be any better.
For some reason, I feel like Jackson isn't going to be back. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I mean, he hasn't said anything. There's no indication to that based on just conjecture for me. But I just don't have a feeling he's to be back, whether that is going pro or I kind of have a feeling he's going to transfer. That's just my lean.
Yeah, and there's a lot of this is a very point guard heavy draft, which means to you that a lot of really good teams are. Houston's got the Kingston Flemings, Arizona's got Jaden Bradley, who's a senior. There's a lot of Kansas has Darren Peterson, although he's not really playing point guard now. Melvin Cancel though is their point guard. There are a lot of really high quality programs that are going to need a point guard. And some of those are some of the bigger colleges in terms of NIL budgets. So if you're a Jackson Shellstad, there's probably going to be a pretty robust market. I wouldn't blame him at all for shopping himself around, especially if he looks and sees and says, boy, this Oregon team might not have a lot around me. Am I going to have to do it all, whereas I could go to an Arizona or a Kansas and feel like the parts might be around me. So I think there will be a robust transfer market for him. I'm like you. I think he'll be in college next year. I think it just comes down to can Oregon match both opportunity and money that he might be offered elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think that if he does transfer away, that could lead to some uncomfortable conversations for Oregon fans and maybe the Oregon program, because this is a guy that's for lack of a better term, a local kid. Yeah. He's an in-state guy. So, it just does show how college basketball has changed, even over the matter of Jackson's career, let alone the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I don't think the in-state part is, again, these days you go where the money is.
Oh, it doesn't matter anymore.
That part there, But the question then would be, who are you going to get a point guard? Because you got to have somebody who can run this offense. Because, again, we saw when it wasn't Jackson Shellstad this year, it didn't run very smoothly, and you don't want to have another season because another 10-20 season, that is when the people will come in and say, hey, maybe there needs to be a change that's made.
Yeah, well, and we thought it was going to be Waylon, and I would be absolutely floored, shocked, jaw on the floor if he's back. Yeah. I can't see it. I just can't see it. Dane Altman doesn't like him. He doesn't have good body language when responding to Dane Altman. I just think that it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be surprised and he'll be back. But I don't think you can rely on him coming into next season.
Not as your starting point guard.
No, because this year, I think the only reason Drew Carter's playing is because they thought Waylon was going to be better than this, and then he just couldn't play defense at times, and he was shooting too many shots, and he turnovers. Like, the talent's clearly there with Waylon. I think Waylon's a good player and will be a good player at some point, whether it's in college or maybe it's international. I don't know. But I think that the problem is, like you said, you're going to have to go to the transfer portal and get guys that are win-now guys, and hasn't been like that for Dane Altman over the recent couple of years. He's been good at times, though.
Yep, and he's got to have the budget, too, because these guys are now in the $2 to $3 million to get some of these guys, and I don't know what their NIL budget is. I know that Kentucky this year was reportedly $22 million, and Kansas was reportedly $15 million, and Oregon, I've heard, was closer to $7.5 million, but you also can't tell him, hey, we're going to have you on a tight budget, but you got to go get a good team, because these days you got to have the budget to go get them.
It does seem like if you're the athletic program at Oregon, you're going to want to invest more in this team this year after the way it went this year. Yeah. Especially if you're going to keep Dane Altman. You can't say, well, it's a transition year or something like that. Like, they're clearly going to be giving him the resources to be able to compete at some level. Yeah. In the Big Ten, I'm not sure what that level is, but I think that they have to commit to him at some point.
Well, and I'll say this. As somebody who covered Oregon basketball in the Pac-12 for 7 or 8 years, the march from the bottom of the Big Ten to the top is going to be much more difficult than it was in the Pac-12. Just quite honest, there are more teams. There's 18 teams. There's 17 teams to jump instead of 11 other teams to jump. But in the Pac-12, you had, there were 12 teams, but you had built in kind of USC usually wasn't very good. Washington State wasn't very good. Oregon State, you didn't have, you could put together kind of an average group, and you were able to be kind of up there with Arizona, maybe UCLA. You could be top 4 type thing. Top 4 in the Big Ten is top 10 in the country. I mean,
100%.
We're talking Michigan, Illinois,
Wisconsin,
Purdue, Michigan State. There were times in the Pac-12 where the number 4 team was completely unranked.
Yeah.
So the idea of moving up that, hey, Dana's done this before and he's going to be able to get us right back up in contention. He did that before in the Pac-12, which, again, had Arizona pretty much every year, UCLA most years, and then you'd get a random Colorado year or USC or this and that. But if you were Oregon and you were consistent, you were in that 3 to 4 and contending for titles. It's a long road to go from 5-15 in the Big Ten to 15-5 in the Big Ten. The other part of this is Oregon has no home court advantage right now. You were there at the end of the year. It's pretty stale. It's a pretty stale arena, except when Oregon's really winning. So you're playing at sold-out arenas in Michigan State, sold-out arenas at Michigan, sold-out arenas at Illinois. These are tough venues to play in, and you've got to go there. And when these teams come here, it's not a tough venue for them to play in. not only do they have more talent than you, your crowd, 1/3 of the crowd is cheering for the other team because these fan bases are so glad to have them come out here, and the other 2/3 are sitting down and watching because they're not very interested in your team, and you're 5,000 to 6,000 people instead of the 15,000 that these other places are getting. So it's a huge disadvantage for Oregon to have to go on the road and play in these great classic basketball atmospheres, and then when these teams come here, they don't have to as well. And then the last thing is the Big Ten tournament. Oregon had it really nice in Las Vegas. That was a nice, easy trip to get down there. Their fans, other than maybe Arizona and Utah, you'd have Oregon fans filling that place down there. It's Las Vegas in March. Who doesn't want to go to Las Vegas in March?
Sure.
You'd have Oregon fans before they even knew what their seed was in the tournament who were planning to go just because you knew Oregon was going to be in it because every team's in it, and you figured you're going to get a couple days in Vegas. So your tournament, it was not a home crowd, but it was certainly not a neutral site, and you were going to have your fans down there. Yesterday, they played in front of, from all implications and comments and pictures I've seen, and played in front of about 500 people yesterday. And I guarantee you there weren't too many of them that were Oregon fans, unless maybe there were some parents that live in the Midwest, because I didn't have any friend this year who was like, dude, we're going to Chicago for the Big Ten tournament. This is going to be great this year. Yeah. The way that my friends used to say, hey, we're going to Vegas for the Big Ten, for the Pac-12 tournament. So my point is, all these things, look, they went to the Big Ten for football, and that's great, and the Big Ten's a basketball conference, but Oregon basketball was in a pretty good spot in the Pac-12 as being maybe the third best program overall, and some years even higher than that. I think they're middle of the pack, 8th, 9th best program in the Big Ten. Their fan base is probably on the lower half of that. Their travel is taking them to places that it makes it more difficult. Just the whole idea of getting a team that can compete at the top of the Big 12 is going to be a way bigger challenge than it ever was in the Pac-12.
This is why we bring you in, Goose. This is why we bring you in, to read between the lines and to lay it all out like this. I mean, I can't help but think that you're right. It does seem like it's a long road, and it has been rough going to Matthew Knight Arena and literally having opposing teams' fan bases chants being heard. I mean,
boiler up.
It's very apparent. You can't hide behind this.
No.
I think that it's something that the Oregon program, I've just been baffled by how they're so ahead of the game in football and with marketing the team. And of course, this is money and all this. Like,
never been good marketing at basketball.
I don't get it. I just don't understand it. How can you be so good at marketing one program and then the other program, it's just like, it's almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And I don't understand.
Part of it is the coach doesn't do it. Dana's not going to be the one marketing and pumping his fist and doing hype videos, and Dan Lanning does some of those things. Mm-hmm. But Dana's thing has always been, hey, I'm not the hype guy. I'm just going to put the great product on the court, and that'll bring the fans out, which it did during Glory Days. But if you're not winning and you're not marketing it very well, that's when you hit the problem. It's kind of the old, Chip Kelly thing when he didn't want to have to shake hands with the boosters. Go 46-7, you don't have to shake hands with the boosters. We'll leave you on your own. You go 4-8 one of those years, you would have had to probably come out and suck up a little bit to those people, but he got out before he had one of those years. But if you're Dana Altman, you say, hey, I'm not the guy to get out there and shake hands with everybody and pump this thing up, that's fine as long as you're winning year after year. But when it goes down, then that suddenly becomes a more difficult thing because, like I say, there's just no energy in that arena, and they haven't done anything to this year to give fans a reason to stand up and cheer.
Well, one of the problems is I think it's hard to get there, and that's for somebody that like I live in like walking distance, 20-ish minutes walking distance, and I would rather do that 25 minutes maybe. I would rather do that than go park over there. So that is one thing. I think the other thing is that this goes back to what your point is earlier about potentially bringing in some coaches. If Dana Altman's not going to be the one that can bring that sort of energy to the team, that's where you need to have at least somebody else around you that I don't know if it can be an assistant coach that like can really do that, but at least bring in somebody that can kind of see that vision. Because clearly Dana Altman, I don't know if he doesn't care, but it hasn't been a priority for him.
Yeah, and Dana Altman has never allowed his assistant coaches to speak with the media. They have to at tournament things, but he's never been one who would let somebody do that. So that would, if you're saying, hey, but I don't know who the assistant coaches are and they're not out here doing either, that goes back onto Dana, and that's his choice. But he's always been one that didn't want his assistant coaches made available to the media.
Well, even if you're not going to have it be like a media thing, I just think that you need somebody around that's going to be like, hey, I was at, let's just call it Illinois. This is how they ran things there. This is the guys that they went after, and this is what you have to do in modern college day basketball. I think it'd probably be good if you're going to get some new blood to probably get somebody from the Big Ten that's in one of those top teams and programs we talked about, because you need to have a little bit more of a blueprint, I think, than what they have right now.
That's what Oregon State just did. That's a great tease, but we'll get to that in the last segment. When we come back in the next segment, it's going to be Travis Demers, your voice of the Portland Trailblazers. We'll catch up on the Zers as they make a run for the play-in and maybe the playoffs. And we will have that when we come back with Travis Demers. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports Eugene and Fox Sports Newport. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. Danny is up in McMinnville as the OSA voice, and he's doing, I think it's Crater versus somebody right now, and then Thurston will be playing at 3 o'clock. But Danny is on the air right now calling the 5A tournament. Speaking of high school announcers, our next guest is a former great Hillsboro, Portland area high school announcer who turned that experience into a job on the NBA beat. He is Travis Demers joining us now. Travis, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. You ever do any of those OSA state tournaments out in McMinnville or around when I think Danny's doing like 3-4 games a day? You ever have a tournament or an experience like that where you had to do a bunch of games in one day?
Oh, yeah. For years, I did the 6A tournament. A lot of it was at the Child Center, and it was usually me and one other guy, Ryan Goff, who still does it, and we would split all the games between the boys and girls tournaments between Wednesday and Saturday. So, I mean, I would do like 11, 12, 13 games in a couple of days. And then they've had it down in Eugene and Corvallis and at Moda Center before. So I've done a lot of those, but at the Child Center is where I really ended up doing double-digit games over a couple-day span. Okay. All right. Well, now you have, like I say, parlayed that into the Blazer beat. Blazers coming off a tough one last night. Charlotte 103-101 in the midst of a kind of a shorter homestand, but they get Indiana to start it. I want to start with that Indiana win. That was one of the better games we've seen from Scoot Henderson, and I know we've talked a lot about him, in the times that we've been on here since he's been coming back. What are you seeing, not just that game, but what kind of growth are you seeing now that Scoot's maybe getting his legs under him after the late start to the season? Yeah, for Scoot, it's been tough because the first couple of games he looked pretty good, and then that road trip, let's just call it what it is. It was ugly. He did not look good on the road trip. The shooting was terrible. I think he went through a stretch where he was 5 of 34 from 3, turned the ball over a bit. It was rough. And then he comes out against Indiana, game high 28 points, no turnovers in that game, and he took over and dominated at times. And that's a lot closer to the Scoot that I think he is going to be than what we saw on that 5-game road trip. And then the follow-up last night, 17 points. He did turn it over a few times, but he was 5 of 8 from 3, made some key plays. And it's just a matter of stringing together the better performances. And, I think I don't want to use the word apologist because I don't think that's fair, but I think I've been championing the cause for Scoop maybe more than anybody else over the last couple of years. I think some of the perception of him is a bit unfair. And eventually he's going to show that. You just hope that it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, this is Travis Demers. You will hear him on Friday night when Utah comes to Portland here on Fox Sports Eugene. We know that they are in the play-in. They have an 8-game lead on Memphis with 16 to go. I like their chances of getting to the play-in. But still a lot to play for there because they probably can't get to 7, but the Clippers and Golden State both 1 game ahead of them in the win column. And that's interesting because if you can just get to 9, at least your first game's a home game, and so you'd win one, you could get 1 at home. If you can get to 8, then you're on the road, but you only have to win 1 of 2. So a lot to play for them, and both that 8 and 9, if they could get there, gives them a little bit of an advantage over what they'd have at 10.
Yeah, it's a really good point about that because right now sitting at 10. 8, 9, and 10, it's going to be the Clippers, Blazers, and Warriors in some combination. Nobody's catching Phoenix. Nobody's dropping down to where Memphis is, right? So 8, 9, and 10 is going to be the Clippers, Warriors, and Blazers, but how are they going to shake out? The Blazers have the tiebreaker over the Warriors, so they only have to win 1 more game than Golden State does the rest of the season. And the Blazers do still have the easiest schedule left in the NBA. The Clippers, I think, is going to be real challenging to pass them. They're playing really good basketball right now. They're playing Minnesota at home tonight. Minnesota is coming off of a bad loss the other night. They do still play the Clippers 2 more times this year, but I think there is a very good chance if they do their job that they are hosting that first game against Golden State, and then if they win, we'll go on the road to either Phoenix or the Clippers. And, who knows? Minnesota or, Denver could potentially drop down to 7, or even the Lakers. You look at the West right now, and 2.5 games separate 3 and 7. 2 games separate 4 and 7. So there's a lot that could happen there with teams trying to stay out of the play-in in the top 6. So obviously they'll be 8, 9, or 10. I think there's a great chance they jump up to 9, and there is a possibility they get up to 8.
So Hornets last night, that was a tough one, 103 to 101.
Say that.
Yeah, and so it's one of those games you hate to lose where Portland's up 34 to 20 after the first quarter, and they just slightly lose every single other quarter. It feels like they had the lead the entire game, and then they give it up at the very end. But man, Charlotte, it's one of those teams I think that you just sort of fine with not playing at this point in the season because they've just turned it on so much. And over the last, I can't even say how many games it is, but it's like 20, 30 games, something like that. They've been one of the best teams.
January 1st, basically.
January 1st, yeah. So they've been one of the best teams in the NBA since then. I guess my question would be, do you think there's any lessons that a team like the Blazers could learn from the way that the Hornets have developed their team? And they have a guy in now Con Knipple, which is hilarious because it seemed like maybe LaMelo Ball was going to be their kind of main guy. And then Con comes in there and he's just like this amazing addition to this team. Like, are there lessons other teams can learn from the way the Hornets have built their roster and the way they've developed their team? Or is this just one of those rare situations?
I hope it's not a lesson that anybody else takes, because this franchise, since they came into the NBA, has been a total disaster. Like, it's been bad basketball. And you look at the records of the Hornets and the Bobcats since they came back to the NBA after the original Hornets left for New Orleans, and it's been a total dumpster fire in every possible way down there. And the buzz, and I know this is kind of a not to use the pun here, but the buzz around the Hornets right now in Charlotte, it's the strongest that it's been since the original franchise left, because they have been that bad. And they haven't won a playoff series in the 20-plus years since that franchise has been there. And over the last couple of seasons, you look at it, and, Brandon Miller is a really good young player. LaMelo Ball is a good young player. Con Knipple has really turned out to be a terrific player. I think he should be the Rookie of the Year. They've found some gems at other positions and things like that. But really for them, it's been hell. You look at the last couple of years, and LaMelo Ball has missed a lot of games due to injury. Brandon Miller last year missed a chunk of games due to injury. And this year they've been really healthy. And then you add Con Knipple to that group that is already a good young mix of players. And they're starting to put it together. After the win over the Blazers last night, they've won 11 out of their last 12 on the road, and that includes a 30-point blowout in Boston over the Celtics.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing is not a fluke. They're just putting it all together. They haven't really been able to climb too much up the standings because they started so poorly. But I think a lot of it is health and finding the right pieces to come together. They're a well-coached team. But I would never say to anybody, hey, look at what the Hornets have done. Follow that plan, because that's a sure way to really turn off your fan base.
Yeah. Travis, I want to switch over for a minute to Donovan Clingan. And not only is averaging 11-8 and 11-5, but also it's interesting, we love to look back on drafts, and sometimes in the past Blazer history, it's been like, hey, they should have taken this person instead of this person. Donovan Clingan's become now, like, you look back at that draft 2 years ago, if you did a redraft of it now, he'd probably be the number 1 pick. He's been as good as anybody who was in that draft. Obviously, they get him down at 5'6", but it's great to get a cornerstone like that and to be able to, like I say, look and say, hey, everybody who came out of that draft, if we had it to do over again at 1, we would take Donovan Clingan.
Yeah, Clingan has been terrific. And to your point, there was a lot of talk going into the draft that Clingan was going to be the number 1 pick. And I don't know how serious it was, but there was some talk that the Blazers would try and trade up to number 1 to go get him. Mm-hmm. And, seeing the way that unfolded, and, Risache goes number 1, maybe they're rethinking that now, but again, he's only in year 2. Sarr went number 2. He's been really good. Mm-hmm. Reed Shepherd has become a great three-point shooter for Houston. Stephon Castle is a really good young player, won Rookie of the Year. And then you have Ron Holland at number 5 to Detroit. He's been up and down a little bit. And then here comes 6. And Chad Doing and I were doing the draft show that night, and we're waiting for the 6th pick to come in, which was the Hornets. And they draft Tijan Salon, the kid from France.
Yep.
And we just got up and started cheering because that meant Donovan was going to be available at number 7. and that's the guy we wanted the Blazers to take. And I think if you do a redraft, yeah, you're looking at it that, Sarr, Castle, Klingon, those are probably the guys that are in the conversation for number one. And I know after last year, there was a lot of, look at what Zach Edey did in his rookie year. The Blazers should have drafted him. No, they shouldn't have. I think they did exactly what they should have done. Some of the other guys around there,
Buzelis,
Chicago has been really good, but you can absolutely make the case that Donovan Klingon has been the best player out of that class.
Yeah. Both this, I mentioned this for you, Travis, and in terms of players. Like I say, there's 16 games to go. Every one of them matters. They're going to, because no matter what, they're going to be in that play-in, and then we're going to have, so we're probably looking at 17, 18, and maybe more games left. For you, after years where this was the time of year when players were resting and it wasn't, is it just a little more exciting for you calling these games? And at the same time, do you see out of some of these players, maybe some of the guys who've been around? I mean, Jeremy Grant hasn't finished a season because he hasn't really needed to. You see guys like that, is there a feeling like, hey, this is pretty sweet having something to play for. Let's kind of make a run at this, see how far we can take it.
Yeah, for me personally, it's nice because, looking at our team, there's something to play for every single night, and the games matter. And the players who are healthy and supposed to be out there are out there, and they're playing to win. And, yeah, of course, draft position does matter for a team that if they make the playoffs aren't going to have their first-round pick, and a team that needs to have more talent. So, of course, that matters. But having things to play for, it's great. And when you have, Drew Holiday, who has won a couple of championships, and Jeremy Grant, who has, made deep playoff runs, a coach who has won a championship, other players, Robert Williams III has played in an NBA Finals. You have a number of guys who have been through that and know how to win. So to have that along with the young players like Scoot and Donovan Klingon, even Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara, these guys have never played in games that matter in the month of March and April. And now they're getting an opportunity to do that. And even if they don't get to where they want to be at the end of the season, at least going through this at 22, 23, 24, 25 years old, like those are experiences that matter. It's not the 80s. And you don't have to, lose the playoff series to go win a playoff series the next year. It's not the Pistons against the Celtics who learned from it and then the Bulls who lost to the Pistons and et cetera. It's not that, but you do have to get that experience, and I think all of that is really important.
A few years ago, we saw Damian Lillard make a run at Kobe's 81 points. He got 71, and I think it was an interesting game because they didn't necessarily force it to him the entire time. There was a part of that game where Dame was a little bit deferential, but he got his big scoring outburst. We've seen Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid get in the 70s over the last few years. Donovan Mitchell, against the Bulls. Don't even get me started about that game. But last night we saw 83 points from Bam Adebayo, who I had friends telling me that if you would guess if you could basically take a guess at who scored 83 points, they said that Bam Adebayo might have been the 50th player they might have guessed, which I think is probably fair. I have a take that I think that now that this seal has been broken, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on just this game in general, but do you think we might start to see more players start to push for the 81 or possibly 100? Because quite honestly, if Bam shoots another 6 threes, hits another 6 threes, he hits 100, which is amazing to say. But first, your just general thoughts on that game and the way that it went down and the fouls and all that stuff. And just, do you think we're going to start to see other players push for this now that I think the seal maybe has been broken by Bam?
I haven't seen any of it. I've seen some highlights. I've gone through the play-by-play at the end of the game. I've heard what some other people have said about it. So my opinion on it is not completely based on a firsthand experience, but the fact that he was still in the game when they're up 25, 30 points in the fourth quarter, I'm not totally cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you saw it, I didn't. So if they were fouling to extend the game to give him more possessions, that's embarrassing to the state of the NBA. He should be ashamed of himself. Eric Spoelstra should be ashamed of himself. The Miami Heat should be ashamed of themselves. That's terrible. You shouldn't be doing that. Now, again, I'm not saying that is the case because I didn't see it with my own eyes. But if it is, I have a big problem with that. And, yeah, of course, you could say, well, let the other team stop him. You don't do that for a lot of reasons. But, he scored 83, and that's great. He also destroyed the record of free throws taken.
Mm-hmm.
He took 43 free throws by himself. Miami took 59 free throws last night. that's not a game I would have wanted to call because it would have taken forever. First of all, and I looked and it said it was a 2.5-hour game. Like, I don't know about that. Somebody must have fast forwarded the tape in live action or something, because that probably should have taken 3 hours. That many free throws.
Absolutely.
But are players going to try and do that and try and beat that record or try and go for 100? Maybe, but I can't really see too many scenarios where players are going to be in a position to do that and they will be allowed to go for that, right? Because what we saw last night, again, in theory, I mean, what is the fact is that they're up by 30 and Bam Adebayo is still in the game, doing whatever he wants. You don't see that a lot because it's disrespectful to the game. Maybe that's an old school way of looking at it. The running out the clock and getting a dunk and things like that at the end of a game that bothers people. I don't really have an issue with that. If you're going to play, stop the other team. But I do have an issue with this, if that's what happens. So I really don't see a scenario where now that has been broken, that other players are going to try and go for it. Because if you look at what other players and coaches have said around the league last night, whether it be J.J. Redick or Ime Udoka after their games, somebody asked Colin Gillespie in Denver after the game last night what he thought, and his response was, I don't care. I don't think – I think the way that he got those points around the league is not respected. So maybe somebody goes for that and says, okay, that's a disrespectful way of breaking, Kobe's record for the second most points in league history. I'm going to put a little more respect on that record. I can see that happening, but I don't think they would chase it because – like in the Sword and the Stone. Well, once it's been pulled, anybody can pull it. No, I don't see it being that way.
And back in the days of Charles Oakley, Rick Mahorn, and Anthony Mason, I would safe to say Bam might not be able to shoot those last 2 free throws because they would have probably made sure that those fouls were a little harder to make sure if he's going to try to run up the score on them. But
if he was going to do that, he would have had cotton shoved up his nose.
There it is. All right, that's our. We're gonna pull that clip right there. That's the best part of the whole one right there. All right, we have Travis Demers Friday night against Utah. You can hear him here on Fox Sports Eugene. If you get bored, go over to McMinnville and listen to Danny and critique his call on the 5A tournament. But thanks so much for coming on as always, Travis. Look forward to listening to you on Friday. Thanks a lot, bud.
Always, guys. Thank you.
All right, Travis Demers, voice of the Portland Trailblazers. All right, when we come back, we are going to chat about the new Oregon State head men's basketball coach, Justin Joyner, and we will get into that hire, give you some of his background as we wrap up the Wednesday edition of the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports Eugene and Fox Sports Newport. All right, welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. Danny is up in McMinnville at the 5A tournament. He is on the air right now calling Crook County has a 64-36 lead over Crater in the first round of the 5A tournament. The important part of that is the next game is Thurston versus Summit. You guys had a great interview yesterday with Boomer.
Yes.
Boomer, my boy Blaine Libator, Boomer. And so he is coaching Thurston. Go Colts. I'm not even going to pretend to be unbiased. I love Blaine Libator, Doug Paquette, Eric Orton, 3 good friends of mine. So they play the next game, and if they can win that, they would advance to face Crook County in the semifinals. Unfortunately, if they lose, then they got a league rematch against Crater. So go Colts in the 3 o'clock game, and go North Eugene tonight. I think North Eugene's the 8:15 game. So love to have a North Eugene Thurston championship game for the Midwestern League. All right. Oregon State has announced its new head coach, and it is Justin Joyner. Justin Joyner has been on the Michigan staff for the last 2 years. I would say those teams have turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah, they're good.
What I like about him, he's 38 years old. What I like is he spent 7 seasons as an assistant under Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. So, that tells, and he's from UCSB, which I know intern Blaze enjoys. Mm-hmm. So what that tells me is West Coast recruiting ties. And I know that the Oregon's not, they're coming out of the WCC, going to the Pac-12, but his top rival at St. Mary's was Gonzaga, who's now in there. So if Oregon State can get itself to a point to where they can be, Gonzaga's going to need a new rival. They're not taking St. Mary's isn't going there. So that's Gonzaga's new rival. If that can become Oregon State, if they can emerge as sort of that second best team in the conference, there's a guy who scouted Mark Few and played it before. But initial thoughts on the hire of Justin Joyner. I'm going to give it a thumbs up because of the West Coast ties and the fact he spent the last 2 years at maybe the best program in the country.
Mm-hmm. Haven't heard him talk, so I would love to hear him just like in an interview or something like that. But I do think that it's the same sort of formula as the Jamarcus Shepard, is it not? You're getting a coach, a first-time coach from a really good program that's having current success right then.
Yep.
And they have ties to the area relatively at the very least. So sounds good. I think the timing of it is, again, really interesting the way this has all gone down. And we were talking about, I think, literally yesterday with Danny about, hey, Scott Barnes clearly has somebody in mind, or he must have somebody in mind if you're going to go ahead and get rid of Wayne Tinkle when he did, because I thought the timing of that was so weird to do it before, but doing it before the season was over instead of just waiting for the season to be done and putting yourself in a position where if you're Scott Barnes, if the team continues to win, it makes you look worse.
Yeah.
And so they win a couple games and then obviously didn't make it to the final. But I think it sounds good. I mean, you're coming from a place where obviously Michigan's had a lot of success over the last however many years. Even obviously over the last few years, they've been a top team in the country. So I think that it does sound good. I would love to hear him kind of talk and know what his philosophies are about things. But in terms of where you're getting him from and the ties, I think that it does make sense as a fit.
And he is going to stay at Michigan through the tournament run, I did see. So he's going to stay with Michigan for what I'm guessing. It'll certainly be, I think they get through the first weekend for sure. They got Final Four capabilities, but we'll see. But it'll probably be a couple weeks till he comes. The interesting point then, his wife, Tracy Joyner, is the Oregon women's soccer coach. This is going to be the stuff that feature stories are made of. You're going to see every national publication is going to be coming doing the women's soccer coach from Oregon, somehow married to the men's basketball coach at Oregon State. How does it work? Who do they root for? Do they in the Civil War soccer? Is he rooting for his Oregon State team? Is he rooting for his wife's team? The same thing there. You're going to see a lot of human interest stories there. But I think it's great, and it's fascinating. I remember seeing when they hired Tracy Joyner that it said, her husband's the assistant at Michigan, and I just remember thinking that'd be tough to live, that far apart, and you're both in businesses to where you're working a lot and working your own house, and you get to really see each other. So for him, it's pretty cool that the job that opens up is one that's this close, and he can come out here. Might be a boost for Oregon State. Maybe this is a guy who traditionally might have waited for a bigger job than Oregon State, but Oregon State gives him a chance to be close to his wife again, which is pretty important, you would think, in the grand scheme of things. So it gives him a chance, and it might also, I think if you're Scott Barnes, or whoever the AD is going to be in the next few years. But if you're the Oregon State AD, you're now really rooting for Oregon women's soccer to do well because you don't want her to lose her job because you want to keep your guy here. And it's kind of tied. It's interesting, some of the ties. There's going to be some back and forths, but I think it's I think it's a really cool story that he gets to now come back out here and be with his wife, and that you're going to have an Oregon State. We've had some transfers between schools. We saw the Atticus Sappington, the transfers from Oregon State to Oregon. Of course, legendary before your time, but Rich Brooks, the old Oregon football coach, had played at Oregon State, and Nick Aliotti had coached at Oregon State. So there have been kind of some crossing of the lines type things.
Yeah, well, there's Mike Parker.
Mike Parker absolutely was the old Oregon and went through. And I'm sure that there are people in this world. I'm sure there's a U of O employee who is married to an Oregon State employee. Sure. I'm not saying that. But I don't think we've ever had two high-profile people like this married with one at the other. So I think it's going to be a great story for media and radio throughout, and I think it's cool.
Completely agree. I also can't help but think, we talked about this with Danny, is that I think that the number that Wayne Tinkle said going into the Pac-12 that they needed in terms of NIL funds was like $4 million, and they're going to get $2 million. Yeah. So we talk about having a rivalry with Gonzaga, who is a really good team every year and does make your conference better, especially with obviously what the Beavers are right now, the WCC. I just don't know if they will be able to be competitive based on those things and the money that you're getting, because so much of what it is nowadays isn't just, hey, like this guy's a really good developer and I'm going to be able to go to this place and get drafted or whatever. It's like, hey, what dollar amount am I getting? And so I think that it sounds like a good hire in theory. But I do have concerns about where this program is and what their standing will be in the new Pac-12 or remade Pac-12, whatever you want to call it, because of the money.
Mm-hmm. To put it in perspective, Yaxel Lendenborg, the best player from Michigan, reportedly received $3.5 million this year to skip the draft because he was considered to be a potential late first-rounder. He was at UAB last year, skipped the draft, transferred to Michigan reportedly for $3.5 million. That would be $1.5 million more than Oregon State's entire roster if the Wayne Tinkle number throws out there. So you're right. And it's the same thing I thought with Jamarcus Shepard. He's coming from Alabama where they have a decent amount and he knows what it takes. I'd be curious. I assume these days, if you're Jamarcus Shepard, if you're Justin Joyner, I assume that money is not your. It used to be your salary was the money you were concerned about. Now you're worried about the roster money. I assume that you, in the course of those negotiations, are able to say, "Hey, I'm not taking this job if you're funding me at $2 million. Hey, if $4 million is the average for this conference, and you're giving us $2 million, you're not giving us a chance." So I assume you can bargain in that to where Scott Barnes is going to have to say, "Hey, look, we'll bump you up to $4 million." I assume Jamarcus Shepard's going to have more money available than Trent Bray just because he had some bargaining power as well. So it'll be interesting to see. And again, like I talked about, these transfers are already, players who are transferring have already told their teams or their agents have already put them out there. So if you're Justin Joyner coming in, you probably know from people who've been reaching out to Michigan, kind of who's out there, and you got to know what your budget is. If somebody comes up and is worth $1 million, you can't go asking Scott Barnes, do I have enough to pay for this? I would assume with the hire, Barnes has to tell him right away, here's what we can get you for next year, and then he can start budgeting that. But it will be interesting to see because, anytime a coach leaves, I assume most of those guys are going to leave. Josiah Lake, who's been their best player and whose dad played at Oregon State, might be the most likely to stay. He's from Oregon. His dad played there. Maybe that's call one for Justin Joyner. Hey, let's keep the all-league guy here, boost him up to whatever it's going to take there. But it'll be interesting to see how he can build a roster. We've seen some coaches can do it pretty quickly. For a first-year head coach who's also still going to be working his job for the next couple of weeks, this is going to be a pretty key time to be burning the candle at both ends. But I'll be interested to see what kind of a roster he can put together in year one. And like you say, what kind of a budget Scott Barnes is getting him to do it. Because, again, if you give him $2 million, he's not going to put much together, whether he's Dusty May or Justin Joyner. Dusty May, because Michigan's got about $10 million to spend.
Mm-hmm. And I do think it, like we were talking about with Dana Altman, and this is a year for Dana Altman. Hey, you gotta if you're keeping Dana Altman, you've got to really just you have to win, right? Yeah. And I think that maybe it's a little bit different than in the situation where you want to have the budget, obviously, but I think at the very least you want to see yourself set up over the next few years where, hey, this is a little bit transitioning now. You're going to a new conference. You have a new head coach. I just want to see them compete and look like they're on the right track, where this season it just felt like, they just had like a ceiling, and they did really well at the end of the year. They kind of surpassed, I guess, my expectations of where they did in that tournament. But sometimes that comes down to a team that's playing for their head coach, and there's just sort of these real-life emotional circumstances that I think were there for this team, and they're playing for Coach Tinkle. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see how they transition into this new era, both in the Pac-12 and with this new head coach, and I don't necessarily know if that'll directly lead to wins right away. Yeah. But I don't know if you have to as much as I would say like Ducks. I think you have a little bit more of a runway here.
And the Pac-12 is going to be good in men's basketball. Gonzaga's good. San Diego State's been good most years. Utah State traditionally is pretty good. So, if you're not keeping up with them in terms of NIL and your roster, don't think that, hey, we're one of the old Pac-12s. We were the Power 5 coming down. We're just going to instantly be one of the top ones because we were one of those. Some of the other ones are going to be there as well. So there's no guarantee that, hey, we were Pac-12 before, and when this thing rebuilds, we're the ones who are coming back and going to be up there. And particularly, football, the conference isn't going to be as good. Baseball, we've discussed, particularly for Oregon State, it's not going to be as good of a conference. But men's basketball, it's going to be a good conference.
They need it, quite honestly, because I don't know how good of a football conference it's going to be. I think it's going to be a worse football conference than it will be a basketball conference. So I agree. It'll be interesting. Yeah, and we'll see on that one there. So it was official for those who are just tuning in. Justin Joyner. Thank you. Justin Joyner is the new head coach of Oregon State men's basketball, and will be arriving in Corvallis once Michigan's done with its NC2A tournament run, wherever that may be. Big Ten tournament, though, is this week, and that's for Michigan. I think Michigan's got a double bye, so they don't play for a couple days. But Oregon's season's over, as we discussed. It is. So and it'll be interesting to see what happens now. Absolutely. All right. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Justin, tomorrow it's going to be Just Justin. It'll be the Just Justin show. So tune in there. I will be back Friday, and we will have big bets going there. I'm on a terrible slump. I'm coming up with the games. You are, but this is going to be a brutal week because the Saturday games aren't going to be determined until Friday because it's all conference tournaments. So we're not going to know Saturday games until Friday. So I was talking about this with Danny yesterday. I'm going to have to do some NBA or something. We'll see. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out, as always. All right. Tomorrow is Justin. I'm back on Friday. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You listen to the Danny and Justin show on Fox Sports Eugene and Fox Sports Newport.